Howdy ho, I'm Mauve. This is my first ever YouTube video. I figured the best way to showcase what I have to offer as an artist is character design. In this video specifically, I'm focusing more on outfits than the character itself, but in order to focus on said outfits, I needed a base to put them on. And who makes a better dress-up doll than Miku herself? I dug around on the good old Pinterest for ideas until inspiration hit me. Mushrooms, flowers, vampires. Okay, hear me out. I don't know exactly why I chose these three ideas to turn into outfits, but whenever I make outfit-focused designs, I do like to incorporate the outfit's wearer, I guess, into it. So I turned ideas into outfits and then turned those outfits into character designs. So technically, I'm still on track as a character designer. It all works out in the end. And you'll see that I wasn't super satisfied with what I had done originally, so I did go back and do a full illustration. Enough of the intro, time to get sketching. Now, I followed my heart's desire for these designs, but in my head, I think I was recreating Miku's original silhouette with her form-fitting top and pleated skirt. If I were to come back to these designs, I think I would change it up a little bit more. Foxglove Miku, which is currently the first one in the lineup, has the most diverse silhouette out of all of them, but only because her skirt is longer and bigger. Mushroom Miku and Vampire Miku are pretty similar silhouette shape-wise. But I'm pretty happy with the color schemes, though. I think it's pretty fun looking all of them side by side because they kind of go into a gradient. Greens to greens and pinks to greens and reds or blacks. Kind of like it's decaying almost. Oh my god. It's a cycle. I've cracked the code, actually. I think my brain is imploding as we speak. So that's pretty fun. Comes to outfit-focused drawings like these, the most important step for me is actually an interesting pose. I find it harder to draw an outfit if the base is just standing still and isn't moving or posed in some way. Different poses make you think of how the fabric or accessories would move, or how they would look from different angles. Vampire Miku is a back shot, so it leads to the outfit being more back-heavy with its design, instead of the front. I get to showcase mushrooms crawling up the side of Mushroom Miku's skirt, and also show the layering of Foxglove Miku's dress, which I think is an important turnaround to showcase every way that an outfit could be interesting. I almost said infant there, but I did not. Anyway, enough of that. On to finalizing the ideas themselves. Focusing on our mushy queen here, I pulled the colors specifically from these reference photos. On the outfit itself, I was sticking close to her original attire, minus the arm sleeves, which I kind of just replaced with these little shoulder strap thingies. I don't really know what they are. I couldn't decide if mushrooms were actually just growing on her or if she would have just picked them up and placed them upon her person, but either way, I liked the look of mushrooms taking over and decided that yes, she will have mushrooms on her skirt. Listen, I didn't say these was going to make sense. I think I stuck mostly with grains in this one because I was just so zoned in on that picture full of moss that I forgot at one point that the idea was mushrooms, not moss. So I think that's my biggest hang up with this design. It reads more like a retextured Miku, but I don't mind that too much. It's giving classic Miku, and I think it served as a good starting off point for the next design. So here is that finished image. Next up, we have Foxglove Miku. My favorite design, personally, and yes, I'm probably saying that because her hair is super long and really detailed, even though I never zoom in on it enough for you to actually see it. Like I said, first video, I'm pretty bad at this. I've never actually seen a foxglove flower before, so I was working with limited photos. I couldn't actually find that many. I don't think anyone grows them around where I live. The closest I've got is maybe wisteria, which is only similar shape-wise. I don't know. Either way, I had a lot of fun with her outfit. I was taking a lot of inspiration from the first dress I'd shown on Pinterest. It was so perfect, and I couldn't not use it for her outfit. I wish I had given myself more time with these concepts to add more detail, because I think I would have liked to put some floral embroidery on her dress. Her design came the most naturally to me as I'm primarily a D&D artist, so this cut and style of dress is nothing new to me. Even though I would go back and probably change Mushroom Miku and Vampire Miku's designs, I don't think I would change this one, just add more detail in general. And here's the background all finished up. Speaking of more detail now, I think Vampire Miku was the one I was the most excited about concept-wise that I ended up not liking as much. I couldn't really find a reference that was giving me the inspiration, and a lot of the ones I did find just weren't very detailed or had much information to go off of. They were more aesthetic pictures, and I don't think I looked too hard as to what outfits I could replicate or take inspiration from, or other color schemes, or just details in general that I think if I were to revisit this design, I would probably look more into like cathedral architecture, something weird like that, you know? I would definitely go back and put more detail into the clothes and accessories specifically, as well as the silhouette, but I do think the silhouette works for this design. The bangs were really fun to change up, as I think a lot of people subconsciously associate Miku with her specific style of bangs, almost as much as her twin tails. So it was really fun changing up that look for her. And here is all of the finished sketches, I guess. I didn't really finish them to, like, perfection, but I do love this messy style, and I love how fluid they are. I think they make a pretty good trio whenever I look at them side by side, and even though there are things that I would go back and change now, I do still really, really enjoy what I did with these. Now, here's when things kind of go off the rails. While I was editing this, I kept looking at the runtime and thinking, that's too short, that's not enough. So I hopped back on Pinterest, found these gorgeous mushrooms, and was struck with inspiration. So inspired was I that I didn't record me drafting up the sketch. I was set on just making the runtime a little longer, so I figured I would actually screen record what I was doing instead of just downloading Procreate's version of the time-lapse. Then, of course, the video was way too long, and I had a 40-minute video, so I sped it up a lot. Think of my general process for illustrations as an ebb and flow kind of deal. I go back and forth between coloring, erasing, deciding something is finished, and then going back to it, etc., etc. I do my sketch in a textured pencil, put down my flat colors, color in the background, and then merge my line art and flats together. I still keep the main subject and the background as separate layers, usually, but then it's just a matter of that ebb and flow for the rest of the illustration. The brush I use gets most of its use for me from the opacity. I keep opacity at maybe an 80% and then layer and layer and layer until I'm happy. If I want good blending, then I pick a darker color, shade over the area I want, color pick that muted tone, and then color with that instead. Kind of just like using a multiply layer, actually, but with a brush. I fiddled a lot around with the sketch since knowing where things go before I merge it all is super important to me. I wanted to take the first design I did, the mushroom one, and give it a full illustration, also to push the runtime a little longer. I decided that throwing Miku on the ground and then surrounding her with mushrooms was a good idea, so I did just that. I think this is maybe my third illustration of drawing someone laying down surrounded by plants. See, first it was an OC and a field of flowers, then another OC and a field of dandelions, now Miku on a forest floor of mushrooms. Oh, also, I think you noticed, but I took her shoes off because I did not feel like drawing them or painting them. I also kept all of the mushrooms pretty simple, as you'll see they don't end up in these big clusters that I drew for some reason to keep track of it, because I was originally intending to cover the entire ground with mushrooms of different kinds, but looking at reference pictures of clusters, I learned quickly that that does not happen in nature. So I just stuck with my intuition and plopped a bunch of shapes wherever I thought looked nice, but I did think about making the mushrooms like detailed and rendered at first, but I didn't have the energy for that, if I'm being honest. This part, I'm just color picking my original sketch and flatting in the shapes where I need them. Depending on the illustration, I add my shading before the merge. I also decided that one of her socks would be torn up just to make the illustration and the outfit a little more interesting, since I stole her shoes away and threw them presumably into the ocean, never to be seen again by anyone, including myself. You'll also come to see that this skirt brings me a lot of trouble, but I probably deserve it for refusing to go search for a reference. I left out a good couple of things from the original design because I was afraid the details would compete with each other, especially with how busy the background becomes. And I didn't feel like drawing a bunch of grass, nor did I have the slightest clue how to convey that, so I took a textured rake brush and scribbled all about the canvas until I could zoom out, squint, and go, yeah, that looks about right. So that was my only thought process for this. I didn't really care how it looked, I just needed it to look convincing for the most part. And then I jumped a little ahead with the shading process because I, again, got zoned in and forgot to screen record. So the way I would describe the rendering process, though, is nonsensical at best and incomprehensible at worst. To me, at least. I didn't really have a rhyme or a reason as to why I make the shading little shapes or why I put hatching in areas. I just think they look nice, and at this point where I am with my artistic career, I kind of just intuitively guess where things go. It's constantly a guessing game, and I never know what I'm doing, but I somehow pull it off, or at least I hope I'm pulling it off. This style of painting I do is very reliant on shapes, but I haven't really tried to play around with how to convey that with hair. So for now, the hair is just a bunch of convincing squiggly lines of different thicknesses, and I think it worked out pretty well. I definitely want to go back at some point and play around with different ways how to convey the hair with the shapes that I use in the skin and clothing, because shading that way is probably the most fun part of this illustration process that I have, or any other illustration process that I have been doing with this style specifically. Here I am remembering the mushrooms in her hair holding up those pigtails. My favorite detail with the outfits was changing what was holding up her hair, and because enough is never enough, I go back in on her hair and add more details, more highlights. Since I'm not using line art for this style that I paint in, I find myself continuously going back to finished areas and adding darker tones to the outlines of stuff I want to pop out more, putting more depth into the shadows. I also go back into the highlights to the skin because I realized I forgot to add it. I go around the whole piece and add more detail and eventually place the star-shaped highlight on her shoulder that I'm so weirdly proud of. I don't know why, but it's my favorite part of the illustration. I also remember the rest of her body exists as well, so I give them highlights too, even though they don't deserve it, especially that foot. God, I hate feet so much. I don't know why I decided to render it, but there it is. You'll never see another one from me again. The piece begged for even more mushrooms, so who was I to deny these decomposers? I give in to their demands to expand their territory, even though one day they'll be sacrificed in a kitchen to the insane people who like mushrooms on their pizza. I don't even know if these kind of mushrooms are the pizza kind, but I pretend they are and pretend that I am doing something good with my life by drawing copious amounts of mushroom. This is going somewhere. I'm going off script. So sorry. But after I was satisfied with the skin, I could finally move on to the clothing. When it comes to folds, I tend to stylize clothing in a way that might not always seem realistic or make sense, but visually, it does about as much as you need it to. This video also exposes me as someone who tends to get sidetracked when drawing, as I immediately stop what I'm doing and start adding more depth to the background. I'm pretty sure at this point all of my layers were merged, so it made going underneath her and adding in that depth and detail a lot trickier than I remember it should have been, but I didn't mind it too much. I just chose a darker color and I started going under. I think I probably should have put more shadows into the hair itself. It seems pretty flat, and more atmospheric lighting to her clothing to show that she's actually surrounded, but those are college things that I've learned since that sometimes I don't always take the advice of, even though I probably should. I just don't care to sometimes because I was hungry and sleepy, and I wanted to get this done with because silly little YouTube man makes silly little videos, and I post them on the silly little internet. What am I saying? The course set was easy enough to render, and I fully relied on shapes. I haven't played around with adding details or anything when I render like this, so the shapes give the visual texture that I need while still remaining pretty simplistic. The socks were simple enough as well, but once again, my enemy, the skirt, came into view immediately after. I think I bypassed it okay enough because, as I said, in this point of the recording, I was very hungry and very eepy, so I just needed to get the skirt to a presentable point. Just enough where I could call it done and then never look at it again, even though I definitely do go back and keep rendering, even though I fully should have given up and stopped and just put her in shorts instead. I don't know why I torture myself with this, but that's just how it goes. I do still like making her skirt different colors for each of the pleats, as I think that brings a lot more color and variation into the shape as well. And here I'm just shorthanding it, and I'm adding in different pleats where they don't make sense. But I also go back in and I add the little details like laces and fringe, and also the mushrooms on her socks that I had promptly forgotten until this point, until I had zoomed out and went, where? I feel like I'm missing detail. What am I not intentionally leaving out that I'm just forgetting about? I'll post the full sped up time lapse on my Instagram when I post this piece eventually, which, speaking of, if you want to see more of my artwork, you should follow me. I'm at mauve_kai on there, and I have a lot of artwork that I've been posting for a couple years now. If you scroll down far enough, you might even be able to see the first ever Miku I posted online. And I'm at the end of my script, so it's freestyle time. I always had planned to do dappled lighting. I'm still not good at it, so I keep trying even though I keep failing at doing dappled lighting, but here is the finished illustration, and now we're at the end of the video. If I'm not terribly embarrassed by this, I have more Mikus to share in the future. A quick word of thanks to my patrons, Octopus Lion and Loesch M, aka two of my real life friends who give me $5 every month through Patreon. You two are greatly appreciated, and I hope to make more videos in the future. Hopefully. Maybe. That was my first video, so I have nothing else to say. Bye-bye.